Hello universe, welcome to my world. When we do Angelina Jordan videos, they're usually directly about her, but today it's going to be indirectly about her, because instead of focusing primarily on her music, we'll be focusing more on a major aspect of her career, and that is talent shows. And because of that, we'll be starting with Angelina Jordan rather than finishing with Angelina Jordan. When we talk about Angelina Jordan and talent shows, there are two massive milestones in her career. First, when she was 7 and 8, she featured in Norway's Got Talent. Just to refresh your memory, let's listen to her final performance while we watch all of them. And let's do the same when she's 13 and 14 and she's performing on America's Got Talent.
I guess I kinda like the way you numbed all the pain. Now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all.
So today, let's go behind the scenes of talent shows. Let's find out what they're all about. So our deep dive into talent shows today, really the story goes back about a year ago when we met Miss Psycho. Do you remember? Hello, Miss Psycho.
Hello, Alan. How are you?
And then quite by chance recently, I came across Miss Psycho appearing on a Romanian talent show.
Valeria Condrea, țineți minte numele ăsta? Clasul 1?
Mă numesc Valeria Condrea, am 29 de ani.
I don't think people here they realize.
And so who better to speak to about talent shows than revisiting Miss Psycho?
Hey, Alan, are you ready to film?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to boogie.
Okay.
So, Miss Psycho, how does a Romanian architect working in Paris get to be on Voice of Romania?
I applied 2 years ago, and they had me in their database for 41 voices, and then they just called me this year and asked me if I wanted to be on Romania, The Voice.
Uh-huh. So they knew about the previous video when you did 41 voices?
Yeah.
My first introduction to Miss Psycho was when I heard her remarkable video where she did 41 different voices of 41 different performers. That's what she's referring to here.
Midnight, not a soft on the pavement, feeling broken, barely holding on, but there's just something so strong somewhere inside me.
It might seem like a crush, but that doesn't mean that I'm serious.
And did you have like a proper audition?
I got the last audition right before the blinds. So basically, on The Voice, you have 3 steps. You have the open call for everybody, then they select a part of them, and then it happens the same. They filter categories of people based on profiles that they look for in the show. And then at the last casting call, it's sort of a whom's face goes well for a camera and whom doesn't.
Okay. Photogenic.
Yeah, well, you have 3 parts. The first one is the voice. Overall, do you have a story? Do you have a profile that goes well for the camera? The second part is more TV oriented, more whether your face plays well or not, if you're a quality star quality. And then the third is more, okay, who do we select based on which profiles we're looking for? Because every show has a quota. This is actually, I've read on forums and I spoke to different talent managers. They have a quota for each show. So they know, okay, this year we can have 40 contestants. That would mean what? 10 of them, they have good voices. 5 of them, they're older people with a good story, sad story. 3 of them are gonna be the stars. So they have to limit the profiles.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we're going behind the scenes to find out what really goes on.
The scenes, yeah.
Okay, so you got on because you're a pretty face and because of the voice, right?
Okay, so my profile initially was the strong woman who knows very well how to formulate sentences, doesn't stress on camera, who has a startup, who is a business type of woman. because that was my profile 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they saw me in real life, it was not really that. I was freaking out because it was my first time going on a stage. So eventually they chose.
When you had your audition, was that when they saw what your voice was like and they saw that you were freaking out when you had your first audition?
My first audition was just a video that I sent to them.
I see, okay.
So it was a recorded video, and they said, you know what, we like you, and you're gonna be on the show straight to the live auditions, the filmed ones. And then they called and they said, maybe you should come and perform for us on stage before you go filming live. So how it happens before the blinds, you don't pick the song yourself. You present a list of 5-10 songs that you could sing.
Blind is when they have the chairs before they turn
Yeah,
around. Okay, yeah.
So before, it's a TV show.
Of course.
So they can't have 2 people singing the same songs. They can't have only sad songs. They can't have only jazzy songs or...
Variety.
Yeah, so they have to select the songs themselves, but based on your repertoire. So you present about 10 songs and then they choose one for you.
Okay. And you chose a very unusual song.
I did not pick it myself.
You didn't?
It was on my list, but I did not pick it.
Okay, so you gave them a short list of 5 or 10 and then they chose it?
Yeah.
Wow. And were they aware of what your performance would be like?
No.
Ah, so when they were filming live on TV, that's the first time they heard it?
Blue are the people here that walk around. Blue like my carpet, it's sitting outside. I have a girlfriend and she's so blue. Blue are the feelings that live inside me.
Blue are the words I say and what I think. Blue are the feelings that live inside me. I'm blue, da ba dee da ba da, da ba dee da ba da.
Blue are the feelings that live inside me. I'm blue, da ba dee da ba da, da ba dee da ba da.
They listened to the versions of those songs for 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, as much as they want. And then they cut you and they say, okay, next, we don't want this one, maybe not this one, no, this one, somebody else is already singing this one.
So of the 5 or 10 songs you suggested, they had to sing each one for a minute or so?
In my case, it was only 3 songs.
Okay.
So they just went, you know what, you're good, first one, go. And they were angry, so.
Okay. And who was listening? Was it the actual judges who were the...
Oh, it was about 10, 12 people. It was the vocal coach of the show, the producers, the people from the band, people that do cameras, because all of them, they need to, from each angle, they need to check if you fit in.
So nothing is done randomly with these shows. Everything is really heavily orchestrated behind the scenes.
Yeah, but it makes sense because you do YouTube videos, I do them too, and you know that you have to think of a plot in advance.
Yeah.
So imagine if you book your show for every Friday, that 1 hour, you have to sell something. So you can't just do it randomly. It would not make sense.
Yeah, I know, but you and I are not making a video where we're trying to cater for 5 million people or 10 million views.
Exactly. So they have to be even more strategic.
And perfectionist, yeah. Were they happy with your interpretation of that song? Because you have a very unusual interpretation of that song.
I think the reason they chose that song for me was that was the only song that I went low.
I have a girlfriend and she's so blue.
The others were high.
Okay.
So high notes, they already have enough high notes. So I go, oh, here's somebody who does low notes. So you don't really have power over your image. And in which you would say, you know what, I want to do both. They have to categorize you into a certain profile universe.
Did they try and steer your image? You mentioned that they had you the image of a strong woman, but then they decided to go with another image?
Okay, so during the interview, it lasted about 40 minutes. So not the 2 minutes that you saw on the show, it lasted about 40 minutes. When you do the last call, when you do the last audition right before going live, you actually, they say yes, you go through other people that do your looks, what style you would wear, how you would react as a person, all that. And they already have your history somehow. So they know at the interview what questions to ask you. So they had already a profile on me, but because under the pressure of the camera, I was not diggling it that well. The whole profile that they had for me, I went through all of it, from childhood, from university years and all that, and parents' relationships, but they chose only one part of it, which is totally fine because it's still part of me.
Which part did they choose?
This is the stressed one.
Okay. Maybe we should watch the 8-minute performance and you can talk us through it.
Okay.
Valeria Condrea, țineți minte numele ăsta? Clasul 1.
Mă numesc Valeria Condra, am 29 de ani și la București vin așa, înconjurat de la Chișinău pe la Paris.
De la Paris vii.
Lucrez în domeniul construcții, la bază arhitect, dar după asta am trecut în partea digitală la construcții cu training-uri pe, nu știu, software. Pare sofisticat, dar nu e așa de sofisticat.
So basically, this is my life story. You're not gonna put that one in. If you put a few seconds, I'm just gonna say, because I thought that they had a certain profile fixed on me, I was not paying attention to what I did on this part, which is generally saying what I do for a living and where I'm located.
Okay.
And they chose a more fun part. I think it was strategic in a way that you had this cute little thing, well, little, sort of a little bit.
You, meaning you?
Yeah. You have this cute, that's what they wanted, I think. You have this cuter vibe, and then on the stage you have a darker vibe. I think that was the contrast.
So they didn't want they didn't want the same vibe, they wanted the contrast.
Because people think, oh yeah, who's gonna sing something pop or whatever, and then they have the contrast.
Okay.
So it's not really shock value, but the intention is there, because it's not shock value at all.
Okay.
Because it would have to be a child singing this.
Okay.
I think that's what they chose those parts, because I was really uncomfortable and I was thinking, okay, when is he gonna ask me the real questions that I knew that he would ask?
Like what?
Well, about my childhood,
Okay.
about my parents, about the immigrant life and all that, because that's what I was.
But that was never broadcast.
Yeah, it was filmed for the 40 minutes, but it was never broadcast.
Okay.
Part where I just sit and they film me, it was during the whole day. We started around 7 in the morning. I sang at 1:15 at night.
So that's like
Yes.
18 hours.
So all this happened around 12, 11 in the morning.
Wow.
Where we had to be near sponsors' panels. Basically, they had two types of personalities. One that was overly confident, and then another one that was a little bit more stressed, because every person has their own past and their own feelings and all that, and they get emotional when they talk about these. So they had to keep only part of those things. Because they tell you, based on your interview, act this way or act another way, which is fine, because when you have 20 hours, you're not constantly in that mood. So they have to keep it coherent with what you did before, how you acted. Okay, this part, when I walked on stage, that was filmed the day before, dressed exactly the same.
So it wasn't continuous.
No, nothing is continuous. The interview was also a day before. So a day before, they filmed everybody from different angles, waiting to audition.
Wow.
So the next day, they take a picture of you at the end of the interview, and they redo it the next day exactly the same.
I have a blue house with a blue window. Blue is the color of all that I wear. Blue are the streets and all the trees are too. I have a girlfriend and she's so blue.
Did they all know the song?
At the end, yes.
They know the song before you sang it on TV?
Oh, no.
Blue are the people here that walk around. Blue like my carpet and singing outside.
You can hear the stress. Oh, it's like,
No,
oh my god.
I don't hear this. I hear that as being stylized.
No, it was not.
With your
The
voice,
real version is on my channel.
Okay.
But I was freaking out.
with your voice cracking?
No, it doesn't crack on my channel.
Okay.
I have a girlfriend and she's so blue.
And if you listen to the lyrics, I repeated the same line twice because I forgot the lyrics. So my head right here was, crap, what's the next line? What's the next line? I'm just gonna repeat the same one. I don't know.
So you didn't have the lyrics on the screen?
No, it's not a karaoke.
Who are the feelings that live inside me?
Another thing that people would need to know is that you don't actually hear the button pressing, so you don't know. If you don't look at the judges, you don't know that they turned. So I just saw a chair turning and I knew who it was. But in my head it was, why in the first place did he turn for this performance? Because I did not get there yet.
Okay.
And I think we can go further a little bit. For example, when they turned, I had no clue they turned.
But the whole criteria of how you do is how many chairs turn, right?
And for example, this, I did not know that the second, I think at this point I knew that the second chair turned. It's not important. I think we can go towards the end. And if you look at my emotions, because I analyze this myself, if you look at my emotions, it's like, okay, I'm in, and then, oh, they're turned, the last two, because you don't hear the button, so you think they just turn at the end
so
like
this is the
everybody
moment
else.
when you realize that the chairs have turned. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is spontaneous, genuine excitement.
Because, not this one. Okay, just gonna say that.
But there was one who hasn't turned, right?
No, they all turned.
Okay.
Okay, the coach that I chose was the one that I was freaked out about because he's like the intellectual of Romania. And he's Alain Mon Papier of Romania.
Thank you. Was he the one who hugged you at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
And he's an intellectual and he's the most respected. He won the most times. Yeah, I mean, he's all that. So he's very hard to turn around. So that's why I freaked out, because I was like, okay, I'm in, I got two chairs, and then, oh crap, there's two more, so that means everybody, and that means him. So yeah.
So you don't choose your coach, the coach chooses you, right?
No. You choose your coach.
Okay.
You choose your coach based on the arguments that they provide you.
Okay.
To sum it up, the first guy that turned, he said, I love it, it's not perfect, but I love the not perfect.
Yeah.
Like that.
A perfect imperfection, as John Legend says.
Yes. The girl said that it was not perfect, but she likes the material. She said, what happens in your throat is interesting and I want to work with that.
Okay.
The woman and the guys, they said that I'm like a dementia person who's got dementia, and they love that and they want a dementia on their team. And the guy that I chose was the one that said, in art, in architecture, you never finish an art object, you always leave it up to be interpreted by the people. And he said, don't ever lose that. Your voice is a mixture between technicalities and, your voice with itself, like technique and then tone, technique, tone. And Angelina Jordan is about tone.
It's so interesting that the judges have to sell themselves to you. And that, they're almost like a politician, where they say, oh, this is why I want you to choose me.
Yes, because you're supposed to be a recording artist at the end. So you have a contract. So they would have to pick somebody that already sort of knows what they want to do. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to know, but they have an agenda where they have to pick an artist because they already have written most of the songs for that artist.
Okay.
So the profile that wins has to be the profile that fits those criteria as well. So you can't win if you don't fit their criteria. At least that's how I see it. It's not necessarily sealed, but it's more or less like that. So that's why the coach as well, on his turn, he has to be strategic when he chooses the contestants that he will go further with. Mm-hmm. And also on the battle, it's going to be later, but on the battle what I noticed is that
the battle is like the second round or the third round?
Yeah, when each coach has 14 contestants and then they do well with each other amongst the team.
So if you have 5 coaches and 14, you have like 70 people going into the second?
No, 40 because the other 2, they were on the same chair, like other team.
But even so, it's not like the last 5 or 10. It's quite a lot.
Yeah, it's 40 people.
Okay, 40. That's a lot.
Yeah.
From start to finish, it's like 6 months from the first audition until the winner's declared. It's over quite a period.
Well, on TV, it's like 3-4 months.
Yeah, I know. But in real life, it's like 6 months.
My audition was in June. It was on TV in September,
And when will the final be?
December.
Yeah, okay, so it's like 6 months. Do you have all sorts of conditions of what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say? And
I don't think I'm allowed to say any of this.
okay. Well, I'm not going to ask you things you're not supposed to say. What I will ask you is, what type of contract, what type of obligation do you have in terms of like, if you win, you automatically have a record contract, right?
Yes, it's for a record contract for a year.
For 1 year.
Yeah, 1 year, and you don't have the right to put out any other songs, anything of your own during that year. That's why I guess Angelina did not want that.
Uh-huh.
Because she would be stuck. Because it's not really the money that they give you, 100,000, something like that. It's not the money, it's the contract worth of that money.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the platform and the publicity.
Yes. So they do the marketing and all that, but if they find you not worthy enough of that marketing, they can decide not to.
Wow. So even if you win, you can still lose.
Basically, people do better if they don't win.
Yeah. That's ironic, and that's true because
That's when you get the exposure. Like that's when you're on TV. That's when people follow you. So if you spend a year doing what you're not supposed to do, then you lose because people, they just don't want you. They want somebody else.
yeah.
So if you get the exposure and you act on your own terms, then you have more chances.
Do you think it's easier for a 20-year-old to win than a 30-year-old? Because a 20-year-old, A, appeals more to teenagers, and B, may have a longer career?
Oh, it's not the longevity. I don't think anybody expects that the winner would have decades of careers. No, I think on a talent show like The Voice, they expect something wow, something extraordinary.
Yeah.
And when you have a 17-year-old that does high notes, it's much more impressive than a 30-year-old that does high notes.
Okay.
Because they would have had the time to develop.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why usually younger people tend to win.
How international is Voice of Romania? In other words, someone like Angelina Jordan and Kudanova, even though they're appearing in a Russian TV, they now have international exposure. Would Voice of Romania also have an international exposure?
I don't think so. No, not really. It's more local, but in my case...
You have international exposure already.
Now, come on. I want to do Eurovision.
Wow. Wow.
I wanted your reaction on camera.
Wow.
So I want to go for Moldova, my own country, because I have no experience live, so it's better to go for a small country, and it's mine. I can go for Romania, I will be screwed. If I go for Moldova, I have more chances.
Okay, just to say Moldova is, would you say Moldova is a part of Romania?
You know what, I'll say this on camera, Moldova is Romania.
Okay.
That's a very activist point.
It's sort of like two sides of the same coin, right?
Yes.
So you have to go back to Romania for the next round, for the battle.
I've been there already. I know the results. I just can't
Which
tell them.
absolutely you're not allowed to say.
No.
Because I remember when Angelina Jordan was being interviewed, and she said, "Oh, do you know the result?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And then she went,
Jeg vet hvem som vinner, men vi ser hva som skjer. Kan du ikke si noe? Nei, sorry.
Yes, but basically on the battles, that's where you lose the power over your image. Because the coach decides basically who wins and who loses. So they have to, by contrast, they have to put somebody shine better than the other one.
Okay, so does each coach put forth one of their proteges into the final rounds? I mean, how does it go? Because the battle isn't the final round, is it?
No.
Okay.
No. You have the blinds, then the battles, and the knockouts, which is people, those left, those 7, they sing and then they choose 3, and then the finals.
So it's over a long period of time, and it's very stressful, and you have to have
But the finals and the semifinals are live. That's why it's in December, that's why it's live, because it's a few contestants, so you can't make many shows with it.
We may have to do another part to find out what it's like in the final for you.
Oh, I wish.
Well, Miss Psycho, it's been a real eye-opener meeting you in person and speaking with you like this.
Really?
Yeah, it's great. It's such an interesting story because you know, you see it from the outside and you don't realize everything going on behind the scenes. It's just absolutely incredible.
It's true.
Pleasure
Well,
to
thank
meet
you
you.
for coming to me in Paris. He's actually at my place in Paris right now. So nice to meet you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.